portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Hey, welcome to Crossroads. Folks, the world's largest carbon capture facility is now being built in the United States. The construction is going to be in Wyoming. It's called Project Bison, and it's set to be completed and running by 2030. It will allegedly remove 5 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere every year through what they call direct air capture technology. And the project is actually part of a larger push now taking place all around the world and in the United States with very similar programs. This actually already exists in some places. Now, folks, this plan has actually been moving forward for a while now. The potential impact it could have, by pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, which I thought we kind of needed. It's not actually known what the long-term impacts of this could be, especially given that plants need carbon, CO2, to survive. But regardless, it's moving forward. Here's a video just to lay it out from the World Economic Forum explaining the Project Bison facility, again, right now being built in Wyoming. Now, Adrian Corliss, the CEO and CTO of the company, of carbon capture, he goes on to explain how the new system works. And he tells the World Economic Forum that this facility will use a lot of energy, and he suggests that because it uses a ton of energy, ironically, folks, get this, it has to use a ton of electricity, thereby generating a lot of carbon in order to suck carbon out of the atmosphere. I would wonder if it makes more sense to maybe just not do it at all and save the carbon from creating the electricity to pull the carbon out of the atmosphere. But that's just me. But he's suggesting that because of this, maybe they need to use, renewables. But that could also just be, for example, buying carbon credits to offset the power they generate, while at the same time sucking things in to create carbon credits, which ironically they have to buy anyways. I'll explain how the game works, because there's kind of a complex game at play, which I would consider to be a racket. But of course, he's saying that they need to use renewables, and that would change that, of course. But he also notes that the facility produces nothing. It actually doesn't generate anything of value. It just disposes of carbon that it captures from the air, and then it dumps it underground into the water aquifers. And so the way the company makes money is by selling carbon credits to businesses. Watch.
There is no real product, because ultimately what we're doing is we're doing disposal. And the product that we're generating is actually, through the way things are being monitored and tracked, it's actually a fiscal instrument. It's actually a carbon removal credit, which is the actual financial product that we sell.
Now, this is really important, because this is actually how the whole net zero system really works, and how a lot of these groups make a lot of money with it. In my opinion, this system works like a criminal racket. It's a racket. And essentially, the carbon credits business is the method through which these programs make profit. It's the reason why a lot of big billionaires are pouring money and investment into it, because they make money from it. And it's also why a lot of, technically useless and ridiculous programs are able to exist and make a profit. It's because there is a racket behind it. And stick with me, I'll explain how this whole thing works. Now look, the business faction in the so-called green movement, they create ratings for businesses, right? They give them their carbon credit rating. And then they push governments around the world to create goals and standards on so-called green technologies and emission standards on companies. These are, for example, the carbon emission goals, the net zero goals, which most first world countries have now adopted. This means that businesses have to meet those goals. And the businesses get investment, the businesses get government money, the businesses maybe just don't get punished by investors if they have that fancy little carbon neutral badge. And since many companies cannot technically stop using energy, keep in mind, folks, for example, that like some of the biggest oil producers are, net zero, quote unquote. It's not because they're not selling oil. It's not because they're not mining for oil. It's not because their entire product is something that goes against the narrative technically. The way that it works is that these companies have to buy an equivalent amount of these credits from companies like this air capture thing to offset what they are creating in terms of, greenhouse gas emissions. So these greenhouse credits are an imaginary product sold to these companies, mandated by the government, and the people pushing it, lobbying government on one side, while investing in these fake, ridiculous companies on the other, which businesses have to buy from, these green credits. The people pushing both sides of this are the ones getting rich. This is how they make money off of it. This is how the green racket works. Now, the business people behind the green agenda, and frankly, a lot of them do this if you look at their investments, they invest in companies that, in my opinion, do absolutely nothing of value. Companies that their entire basis is on a conspiracy theory. But again, it's bad science being manipulated essentially by bad politics. But the real issue here is they found a way to make money off of it. They found a way to make governments force companies to buy a useless product, imaginary carbon credits, or a way to discourage investors from putting money in companies that don't play their game. They found a way to force businesses to buy this. Again, whether it's through government policy, like net zero goals, or whether it's through things like, for example, ESG standards or environmental standards and so on. The companies, of course, then have to buy those credits from weird things like businesses that cut down trees and bury the wood, which is real. Bill Gates invests in that. Or things like direct air capture facilities, which I'll show you more of right now. And these companies that produce nothing of value can then, of course, sell these credits, which represent the amount of carbon emissions that they claim to have stopped. Remember the one that buries the trees? The concept of how much carbon they stop from emitting, right, is based on the hypothetical situation that if a tree were to catch fire, the smoke from the fire would generate X amount of carbon emissions. And so by chopping down trees and burying them under the earth, they say they create X amount of carbon reduction potential, and then they take that X amount of carbon reduction, convert that into imaginary carbon credits, and then sell that to businesses. Just explaining how ridiculous this system is, right? And these businesses, they're forced then, because of, again, government policy and investor policy, because of things like, for example, ESG standards, they have to buy enough of these credits to offset the amount of energy they use until they reach so-called net zero, a kind of equilibrium. It's a racket. Now, back to the systems of this so-called direct air capture, though. It's actually a growing industry. It's getting big, like seriously big. According to the World Economic Forum, there are already, and this is not a lot, but hear me out, there are already 19 of these facilities operating in the world, but there are another 130 currently being built, and the plans are now to get some added investment. The goal is to have thousands upon thousands of them. And I would question, how much carbon can you suck out of the atmosphere before you harm the earth? How much carbon can you suck out of the atmosphere before you destroy the greenhouse gas effect and you kill the plants? How much carbon can you pool, right? But they're not thinking about that because these are not legitimate, in my opinion, green companies. These are companies that are engaging in what I would personally consider a glorified criminal racket which has fooled governments and fooled businesses, and they found a way to force them to buy a useless thing which could cause a serious disaster, again, I think. And BlackRock now, of all places, of course you might expect it, is investing in another facility which is said to become the largest in the world. They've pledged to give over $500 million of their clients' money to this project. And another big point of this whole green agenda is, again, ESG. That's environmental social governance, which we talked about briefly. And this industry of ESG, which is an emerging multi-trillion-dollar power structure that unites governments with corporations in the march toward a brave new world of climate and social justice. Now look, we actually did a documentary exposing this partnership, by the way, between government and big banking and tech giants. If you haven't seen that yet, the documentary we did explaining ESG is called The Shadow State, which you can actually watch on Epoch TV, EpochTV.com. Now, I'll be talking more about the details of the direct air capture facilities, the net zero racket, and the agenda that's being pushed by the United Nations and green business programs and other things. But all this is going to be on, of course, along with the live Q&A, only on Epoch TV. So for those of you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, now's the time to jump over and join us on Epoch TV, which makes me able to talk about things I cannot talk about here. Come join us on Epoch TV for the rest of the episode. I will see you there.
In America, politics and business are two separate worlds. Politicians make laws, CEOs make profits. But now, that's all changing. A movement has been growing to unite corporations, governments, and global institutions. Its purpose is to deal with issues like climate change, racism, inequality, and gun control. It is called ESG. How does it work? And how will it change our lives? Are we bending Wall Street to our will, or are we the ones who will be manipulated?